I remember the night it all began as vividly as if it happened yesterday. My body was pressed against the wall of a hotel room I should never have entered. His hands were rough, hungry, and my lips trembled under his. My mind screamed for me to stop, but my heart beat wildly with a desire I could not control. The sound of his breath filled my ears, and when he whispered my name, I let go of every boundary I had once sworn to honor. That was the night I betrayed my husband in the most unforgivable way. Before I take you deeper into this story, I want to pause here. To all my amazing subscribers, thank you so much for being the fuel that keeps this channel alive. To my new viewers and the ones still deciding, I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button. It means more than you know. It powers me to keep sharing stories this raw, this emotional, and this unforgettable. Do not forget to share your thoughts in the comments below, because your voice is what gives life to every story I tell. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Emily. I am 33 years old, born and raised in a small town in Ohio. I live in the suburbs now with my husband, David, who is a steady, hard-working man. He works long hours at a construction firm, always with calloused hands and a kind smile when he comes home. He is the type of man most women dream about, loyal, patient, dependable. But sometimes stability feels like silence, and silence can feel like emptiness. The other man was Aaron. He was David's closest friend, practically a brother to him. They grew up together, and I met Aaron shortly after meeting David. He was nothing like my husband. Aaron had charm that burned like fire. He was reckless, adventurous, and dangerous in ways that drew me in even though I knew better. It started innocently. Aaron came around often, sometimes to watch a game with David, other times to help with house projects. He had this way of looking at me, holding his gaze longer than he should have. I told myself I was imagining it, but my body betrayed me. I felt the flutter in my stomach every time he stood close. One night, David was stuck at work late, and Aaron stopped by to drop off some tools. It should have been a 2-minute conversation at the door, but when I opened it, he stepped inside like he belonged there. We talked in the kitchen, nothing out of the ordinary, but the way he leaned against the counter, the way his eyes stayed on my lips, it was like gravity pulling me toward him. I told myself to keep my distance, but temptation does not listen to reason. The first time it happened was a stormy Friday night. David had gone out of town for a work trip, and I was home alone. Aaron texted me, asking if I was okay with the thunder shaking the house. I laughed at the message, but when he showed up at my door minutes later, my laughter faded into nervous silence. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face. My heart raced so fast I thought I might faint. When he kissed me, I knew I should have pushed him away, but instead, I let him in. The passion was overwhelming, like fire after years of cold. My body betrayed my vows, and I gave in completely. That night turned into many nights. Every stolen moment felt like a secret drug. I was addicted to the thrill, the forbidden nature of it all. With David, life was steady and safe. With Aaron, life was reckless and dangerous. I told myself it was only physical, but I knew in my heart that was a lie. Weeks later, I discovered I was pregnant. My hands shook as I held the test in the bathroom. David was overjoyed when I told him. He lifted me in his arms and spun me around, tears glistening in his eyes. He believed he was going to be a father. He believed this was his child. I let him believe it. Inside, I was drowning in guilt. Every time Aaron's face flashed in my mind, I felt my stomach twist with shame. I avoided him, hoping the distance would quiet my conscience. But he would look at me with that same smirk, that same fire in his eyes, and I would remember everything we had done. From that moment forward, I carried a secret that would haunt every corner of my life. My husband was preparing to raise a child that was not his, and I was the woman who placed that lie into his hands. The months that followed were the heaviest of my life. Pregnancy is supposed to be a time filled with joy and excitement, but for me, it felt like living inside a cage of my own making. Every smile from David, every gentle touch of his hand on my growing belly, was a knife of guilt twisting deeper. He believed he was preparing to welcome his first child. I knew the truth, but I buried it under layers of lies and half-smiles. I would wake up in the middle of the night and watch him sleep beside me. His chest would rise and fall in a steady rhythm, his arms sometimes resting protectively across me. In those quiet hours, I hated myself the most. How could I have betrayed a man so kind, so good, so undeserving of such darkness? Yet, the memory of Aaron's hands, his breath, his fire, lingered in my body like a tattoo that would not fade. David was a devoted husband during my pregnancy. He attended every doctor's appointment, proudly holding my hand in the waiting room. He painted the nursery walls himself, choosing a soft sky blue shade because he hoped for a boy. He assembled the crib late into the night, sweating, smiling, and humming under his breath. I would watch him, pretending to be happy, while my stomach churned with guilt. Aaron stayed in the picture, though I tried to push him away. He would text me sometimes, asking about the baby, asking how I felt. His words would remind me of what we had done, and sometimes when I was weak, I would reply. We met only a handful of times after I discovered I was pregnant, but every time he looked at me, I could see the unspoken truth in his eyes. He knew the child was his. There was one evening I will never forget. David had invited Aaron over for dinner. I cooked roast chicken and mashed potatoes, the kind of meal David loved. The three of us sat at the table, laughter filling the air, but under the surface, tension sizzled like a live wire. I caught Aaron's eyes across the table, and for a moment, my breath caught in my throat. David was telling a story about his coworkers, completely unaware of the storm swirling just inches away from him. After dinner, David left us in the living room while he stepped out to take a work call. The air grew heavy. Aaron leaned toward me, his voice low, his words sharp. "You know he does not deserve this," he whispered. I froze, my heart pounding. My hand instinctively went to my belly, a silent reminder of what was at stake. I shook my head, desperate for him to stop. "Not here. Not ever," I hissed. David walked back in seconds later, smiling, oblivious. I forced a smile too, praying he would never sense the chaos beneath the surface. When our son was born, David wept. He held the baby in his arms, staring at him like he was holding the very meaning of life. "He has your eyes," David whispered, kissing the tiny forehead. I smiled, tears slipping down my cheeks, but inside, I was screaming. The baby's features bore more of Aaron than David, but love blinded him. Love made him see what he wanted to see. The months rolled by, and David became the father every child deserved. He woke in the night to feed the baby, sang lullabies in his rough but tender voice, and proudly pushed the stroller through the neighborhood. Neighbors congratulated him, telling him how blessed he was. He would beam with pride, while I swallowed down the sour taste of shame. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, convinced I would break. The guilt grew heavier with every milestone. The first smile, the first laugh, the first time David held out his arms and the baby reached for him, it all tore me apart. But desire is a wicked thing. Even while I lived this lie, the memory of Aaron still haunted me. Sometimes when David kissed me, my mind drifted back to Aaron's lips. Sometimes when I closed my eyes, I saw Aaron's face. It was a cruel, endless tug-of-war between love, lust, and guilt. The turning point came one Saturday afternoon. David had taken the baby to the park, and I was alone in the house. Aaron showed up unannounced. I told him to leave, but he stepped inside with that same bold confidence. He touched my arm, his eyes burning into mine. "He looks like me," Aaron said softly, his voice edged with something dangerous. I shook my head violently, tears springing to my eyes. "Do not say that. Do not ever say that again." But the truth was undeniable. That afternoon, I realized how fragile my world had become. One slip of Aaron's tongue, one careless word, and the entire illusion would shatter. David's trust, our marriage, the life we built, it would all collapse. From then on, I lived in constant fear. I studied every look David gave me, terrified he might notice something. I watched his hands cradle the baby and wondered how he could not see the truth staring back at him. But love has a way of blinding the innocent, and David was blind. The lie had taken root so deeply that even I sometimes pretended it was not a lie. I tried to convince myself that maybe David was the father. Maybe fate had given me an undeserved mercy. But every time Aaron's shadow crossed my path, reality slammed back into me. I was living a lie. A dangerous, fragile lie. And I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth tore everything apart. The truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, no matter how deeply you try to bury it. For nearly 2 years, I carried the weight of that secret, pretending that everything was fine while living in constant fear of exposure. But the day finally came when the walls I built around my lie came crashing down. It started with whispers. David's mother was the first to notice things that I had hoped no one else would. She would study our son closely whenever we visited. At first, she said nothing, but her eyes lingered too long on the curve of his chin, the color of his eyes, the shape of his smile. One Sunday afternoon, as David carried our son into the living room, his mother said, almost absent-mindedly, "He looks so much like Aaron when he was little." My heart froze. David chuckled, dismissing it, but her words clung to me like a curse. I saw the way David's brow furrowed for just a moment before he forced his smile back into place. From then on, I could feel his curiosity growing. He began asking small questions about the pregnancy, questions he had never asked before. He looked at old family photos with unusual focus. He seemed restless, uneasy, as if something deep inside him was whispering a truth he did not want to hear. The breaking point came one rainy Thursday evening. David came home from work looking pale and unsettled. He barely spoke through dinner. Later that night, when I was tucking our son into bed, I noticed him standing silently in the doorway, his eyes glued to the boy's face. "He looks just like Aaron," David said quietly. His voice trembled, and my blood turned cold. I laughed nervously, brushing it off, but his expression did not change. His eyes were sharp, full of suspicion. That night, he barely touched me in bed. He lay on his side, stiff, silent, and distant. A week later, without telling me, David took our son for a DNA test. I found out when he confronted me in the kitchen, his face ghostly white, his hands shaking. He held the envelope in his hands as if it were a loaded gun. "Tell me the truth," he demanded, his voice breaking. "Is he mine?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My throat burned, my chest tightened, and I felt my world collapsing. David tore open the envelope, his eyes scanning the words that confirmed what I had fought to keep hidden. His knees buckled, and he staggered back, clutching the counter for support. The sound that came out of him was not human. It was raw, guttural, filled with pain that I had never imagined possible. He threw the paper at me, his face contorted with rage and heartbreak. "All this time," he shouted. "You let me raise him. You let me believe, God, I loved him like he was mine." Tears blurred my vision as I reached for him, but he recoiled as if my touch burned him. His fists slammed against the counter. His voice cracked as he said, "You destroyed me. You destroyed us." Aaron's name spilled from his lips like venom. He put the pieces together quickly, realizing what I had done and with whom. The betrayal doubled in weight because it was not just infidelity, it was family. The hours that followed were chaos. David screamed, cursed, and sobbed while I begged for forgiveness that I knew I did not deserve. Our son slept peacefully upstairs, oblivious to the storm raging beneath his roof. By morning, David was gone. He packed his bags with shaking hands, refusing to look at me. His words echoed in my ears as he walked out the door. "I will never forgive you. You will never see me the same way again." And I do not know if I can ever look at him without seeing Aaron's face. I collapsed on the floor, my body racked with sobs, clutching the silence he left behind. The fallout was brutal. David cut ties with me almost completely. He filed for divorce within weeks, and the process was cold, fast, and final. When the court papers arrived, my hands trembled so hard I could barely sign them. Aaron, for his part, did not step up. In fact, he retreated. The reality of fatherhood did not suit him. He claimed he had never wanted things to go this far. He had enjoyed the thrill, the secrecy, but when it turned into a child, into responsibility, he vanished. That left me alone, with a child, with guilt, with a broken life. Friends turned cold. Family members whispered behind my back. I became the villain in every story, and perhaps they were right. Sometimes I watch my son play, his laughter echoing through the quiet house, and I wonder what scars he will carry when he grows older. Will he hate me for what I did? Will he understand the choices that destroyed his father's trust? There are nights I lie awake, haunted by David's last words to me. Nights when I imagine what my life could have been if I had never let temptation win. Nights when I hear Aaron's voice in my head, whispering the lies that pulled me down a path I can never undo. The truth is, some mistakes cannot be forgiven. Some betrayals are too deep, too cruel, too final. My husband once looked at me like I was his whole world, and now I am nothing more than the woman who ruined his life. I cheated with his brother. I gave birth to a child that was not his. And in the end, I lost everything. The house is quiet now, but inside me, the echoes of that betrayal still scream. And I know they always will.